Welcome to the Positive Pants Podcast. Mindset, motivation and inspiration to help you find your positive pants. It's time to let go of negative thinking, understand why you do what you do and stop the self-sabotage with your host, Fran Excel.
Welcome to the show. As always, it's Fran Excel, your resident subconscious success mentor, helping you find your very own pair of positive pants so you can get out of your own way and live a life that you love. If you want to stop self-sabotaging your own success and let go of the stress, then you are in the right place, my friend. Make sure you download your free Stressed to Success guided meditation at bit.ly/stress to success as my little gift to you just for being here. Please do subscribe, share and review. It really, really helps people that need to hear this message find us, and I so appreciate it. In the show notes, you'll also find details of how you can work with me and where you can get your mitts on my meditations, products, printables, programs. You can find it through the link in my bio on Instagram, which is my favorite place to hang out. So please do come join me over there at I'm Fran Excel. Tag me in your takeaways, slide into my DMs. I'm here for it. So that's the formalities over, my love. So let's jump to the content. Understanding the stages of grief. Oof. A big one today. In the late 60s, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross developed the 5 stages of grief in her book on death and dying, specifically about people facing terminal illness, and it was quickly adopted to grief in general. And just before I dig in, I'm putting a trigger warning out for you. I'm not actually going to be talking about death specifically, but if you're in the midst of going through anything traumatic yourself right now, please do go easy on yourself and maybe come back to this episode when you feel more ready. I wanted to do this episode because since the pandemic, I feel a lot of people have been grieving a lot of different things. We can't deny that life has changed immeasurably, whether that's for better or worse. And I'm having so many conversations with people at the moment who are dealing with what feels like grief, and it's worth acknowledging because so many of us have faced losses of some kind over the last few years alone. And the thing with grief is it really is not just reserved for death. Grief is a natural response to a loss of any kind. Grief can hit us in so many other circumstances. And having been through my own deep grief recently, I believe it's helpful to understand the stages of grief and that healing is not linear. As you'll likely know by now, I believe that understanding ourselves and what to expect when it comes to how we tick as humans is incredibly comforting in times of stress or pain and can alleviate a lot of the added negative thoughts and beliefs and feelings that we can pile on top of it. Because the last thing anyone needs when they're in a grief process is to be nasty to themselves in their own heads or to beat themselves up for having incredibly natural feelings that do need to be processed one way or the other. And some of the very common grief processes that we might go through and perhaps not identify it as grief as easily is at the end of a relationship, at the end of a friendship. That can bring really deep grief too. Coming to terms with limiting illnesses, and grieving the way that we thought our lives were and were going to be. Even the loss of a job or letting go of a business. Identity loss can hit us really hard too. And there's so many ways that can happen, whether it's down to our appearance or a breakup or pregnancy or infertility, retirement or something else, right? We attach so much to our identity, and when that fundamentally shifts for some reason, if we're not supported or equipped to handle it, it can have a profoundly deep effect. There are so many more things that we might grieve too, but we might not actually allow ourselves to recognize it as grief, to recognize it in that way, because we have these ideas around what we should or shouldn't grieve, and there should be no judgment around what you can or can't grieve. It's a process, and every person is different. So for me, the reason this episode felt important is because I'm seeing so many people struggle at the moment. And when we can normalize our internal processes and understand that we aren't broken or alone and that things will get better and that you can have immense growth throughout the process, it can make it easier, even if it's just by a small fraction. There is no time limit with grief either. whatever it is that you may be grieving. But one thing that I found incredibly comforting is knowing that alongside these stages, you are also growing at the same time. You are healing at the same time. These two things are coexisting, even though there might be days where it really doesn't feel like it. Grief and healing aren't linear. So the 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I believe that healing and processing and growing are the final stage too, and also absolutely happening throughout. So denial is a tricky stage because it's where we might be completely ignoring the signs that it's time to let go of something that is right under our nose. Or if you've lost a loved one, this might be slightly different. It might show up as a feeling of numbness and carrying on as if something hasn't happened. And we need to remember what our body is actually doing at this moment. This is a way of protecting ourselves, and it's totally natural and not anything to feel shame around. Our minds often need to just adjust to a new reality, and that can take time and feel confusing. And the next stage is anger. And oof, I went through this one big time. This is where we're seeing our new reality for what it is a little more. We might be angry with someone else for their behavior or their actions, whatever it might be. Or we might be angry at the situation itself. We might be angry at ourselves for letting something go on, or some higher power, right? You might also lash out at other people in this stage. And again, we need to remember in this stage that it's part of the process and it's absolutely justified anger, right? The way I saw it, though, was progress. Yeah, things are moving. It's another step forward and an opportunity to work with the emotion, which thankfully I'm incredibly grateful to be well versed in by this point after 8 years of training in these things. You know, finding ways to process the healthy anger and not be consumed by it. And that will look different for all of you. So the next stage is bargaining. So this is where we're still trying to protect ourselves on a deep level and trying to find ways to alleviate or avoid the pain. And we might do this with someone else that's involved. You know, the idea of like, if you do this, then I promise I'll do that, you know. Or we might do it with ourselves. We might bargain with a higher power. This is where we might feel like we would do anything to take away the pain. You know, this is where in relationship breakups, it can be so easy to go back to someone that's not right for us or has been toxic for us. Or we might start to look for the positives and start to ignore the negatives in a situation because it might feel easier to go back than to do the healing work to move forwards through the pain. Because remember, change happens when the pain of staying where you are outweighs the pain of the change. So please be kind to yourself if you recognize this in yourself, and be kind to others who might be going through this, as it can bring with it a really intense feeling of powerlessness and lack of control and can be really isolating. And then we have the depression stage, and again, a painful but necessary part of the process, and one where healing still is taking place. Again, it's about doubling down on understanding where you're at in the process, that things are temporary, that you know and do the things that help you feel better. You are processing pain at this stage. This is where people might want to isolate themselves more and be less sociable. And in this stage for me, I felt the need to retreat, and I gave myself that sometimes, but I also made sure that I was reaching out to people and being honest about where I was at. Some really, really beautiful, amazing, fun memories have come from this for me. And every time I did spend time with people, I always felt better after. And it might be different for you. This was part of my process. And so much of what makes these first few stages so hard is how much we're trying to resist and fight against it. But eventually you come to the acceptance stage. This is where the fog clears, things feel calmer, the pain is not as painful. We're coming out of survival mode. You can see more clearly the growth and the learning that you'll take through life in this stage. You might feel like you're coming back to yourself. You might feel hopeful. But as I said, grief is not linear. You might move through these stages super quickly and in order, or you might go backwards again, or it might take you a while. But it's understanding that there are stages to the process and you will come out the other side. And this is just one model of the grieving process. And it's one that I found helpful because I find it simple, right? And whether you're grieving a loved one, a loss of a marriage, an identity, a relationship, a friend, a business you've decided to let go of, a job that you've lost, remember you are healing. You might find you need to sleep more and also struggle to sleep. You might procrastinate more. But it's a time to go all in on looking after yourself and listening to what you need. You will likely need more rest. You're in your conscious mind a lot more. You're overwhelmed, you're ruminating. And allow it instead of beating yourself up for it. Let go of the guilt. And please take good care of yourself and other people in your life that you might be recognizing these signs in. And don't feel the need to rush, and have patience. You will get there. So if you got value from this and you know in your gut that now is the time to step up and start rewiring your thinking and start changing things for yourself, then join the Positive Pants Toolkit app and community so you can work out what needs to happen to get you from where you're at right now to the action-taking success you know you can be. And if you want my eyes and ears on your problems, then I work with people one-on-one and through my programs. You can find all the details to join the toolkit or book in a call in the show notes, the link in my bio on Instagram, and on my website, franexcel.com. So stop waiting for if and when and choose to change things now, because you can. I'm here to believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. And as always, I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you next week. Bye.